My name is Victoria Winters. I can still remember the words I heard the night I arrived at Collinwood. Welcome to the beginning and the end of the world. They had no meaning for me then, but now they seem terribly real. As real as the mysteries of this strange, dark house and the troubled souls who live within its walls. As real as the passing minutes and the growing fear they bring.
It's only 11:10. Not even the witching hour.
The witching hour. Oh, Carolyn, sometimes I think I'm losing my mind.
What's the matter?
I'm frightened.
Of what?
I don't know, but I have this awful feeling of impending disaster.
Talking about Dark Shadows in my best soap opera ever project. We are now on August of 1966 for Dark Shadows. And it was another mostly solid month, but I have some negatives this month for the soap.
We're very much alike. Did you know that?
Are we?
Yes, we both know what we want and we go and get it. And we don't let anybody or anyone stand in our way.
I don't know what you mean.
I have a hunch that you do.
We're still coming off of the story from July where Roger is in a car accident. He thinks it was Devlin that messed with his vehicle, but it was really David, and Victoria found the valve in David's room, and her and David had this confrontation where he tries to wrestle it away from her. She goes and locks it away in her room, but then it ends up missing. So a lot of the first part of August was still dedicated to the David story, David being quite the bratty kid that can get annoying, but I feel like they were always going for David as this like problem child character who also has like this eerie connection to, I don't know, maybe the other side, we'll put it that way. I feel like they are going for that with the character of David.
I found the valve, hidden in David's room. He ran away. I locked it in my dresser, but he managed to get it back.
David?
I know it's not easy to believe.
It's impossible to believe, Miss Winters. Absolutely impossible. The person who tampered with my car is Burke Devlin, and I know it.
I don't think you're upset because you think David tampered with your brakes. You're sore because I didn't.
All right, Burke.
No, it's not all right. You wanted to hang it on me, didn't you? You were dancing through the streets because you thought you'd found a way to send me back to prison and lock the door. Well, I'm sorry to spoil your fun, Roger.
It's time we face reality, Liz. David isn't a normal child for whatever reason, and he needs special help.
But he's so frightened.
But he should be. Liz, there are places, schools equipped to help problems like him.
No, Roger. I don't want to think about that.
But you've got to.
But this is his home. I don't want to send him away.
Do you know that if he was older, he would be in prison for what he tried to do?
But he's not older. No one did tamper with the brakes. The valve fell off by itself.
Liz!
I'm sorry I couldn't call you, but I just found out about it.
Liz, what are you trying to do?
Roger, will you please let me explain? Our caretaker just told me. He was afraid to mention it because of the accident. But it seems that the valve had been loose several times in the past and should have been replaced.
The other side story at the start of the month was Carolyn turning down Joe's marriage proposal. Joe being a character that doesn't feel like he's good enough for Carolyn because Carolyn comes from this rich-ish Collinwood family.
Hey, Andy, let's get some service over here. Waiter!
Having a little trouble, Joe?
You know, waiter, I've had it. I've been shoved and stepped on for the last time. Right? Right. For the last time.
Joe?
That's right, Mrs. Studdard. Good old reliable Joe.
You're drunk.
I want to see Carolyn. And I want to see her now.
I don't know what you're trying to
Sit
prove.
down.
I think you're the one that ought to sit down.
Oh, you're funny. Do you know that? You're a very funny girl. You're also a very sad girl.
What do you want?
I want you to know what you did to her. That's what I want.
Me?
Joe, now you listen to
No,
me.
you listen to me. Carolyn, you know when you're gonna get married? Never. Now, it isn't me. It isn't anybody. It's you. Old spinster you, sitting in your dungeon, keeping your mother company.
And Carolyn has kind of showed interest in Burke Devlin, who, of course, is rivaling Roger because of their history. But Burke has also been trying to get close to Victoria. Carolyn being jealous of that relationship is another thing that's been going on in the month of August.
Well, aren't you going to ask me to join you?
Are you sure it's safe?
It was safe enough last night for Vicky Winters, wasn't it?
Thanks.
Burke Devlin, sent to prison by the cruel Collins family, returns to wreak revenge upon them.
Do you think that's why I'm here?
Matter of fact, I don't. Unless you have deep, dark designs on my little cousin's governess.
That's the second time you've mentioned Miss Winters. I think you're trying to tell me something.
Miss Winters? Do you mean she had dinner with you in your hotel room last night? And you still don't call her Vicky?
I'll get around to it. Just give me time.
I don't think I will.
What?
Give you time.
Now, I think my bigger issue with this month was two things. One, on an episodic day-to-day basis, the show isn't that interesting all the time because it leads me to my second problem, which is actually a problem that a current soap opera gets a lot of slack for over the past decade. The Bold and the Beautiful being a short half-hour show in America, and Dark Shadows is obviously a half-hour soap opera as well. And I just feel like they kind of, Bold and Beautiful has gotten a lot of slack over the past decade, and rightfully so, for just kind of showing one story at a time, or really just telling one story at a time with maybe a side story popping up every now and then. And it hasn't been good for Bold and Beautiful. And I feel like Dark Shadows does the same. I feel like the main story, these first 2 months, really, 2 months and a week of the show, is Burke versus Roger and their history together. That's always the main story that's on most of the time. And I don't know, I just feel like, there's this thing with soap opera fans where it's like, the classic soap operas really were just so much better in the 60s and 70s, but I feel like we have some of the same problems here that we dog The Bold and the Beautiful for. So I just don't like when one story is kind of taking up all the time if it's not that interesting. Though granted, I find the story on Dark Shadows way more interesting than most of the stories on Bold and Beautiful for the past over a decade, probably almost 2 decades. So I think still storytelling was maybe more carefully crafted back in the day.
Who is it? Who's in there? Who is it?
girl who has...
It wasn't imagination, it was real. Someone was crying, I know.
From behind that locked door.
Well, I thought it was.
An old house, Miss Winters, has many strange sounds, and if you go on staying here, you are likely to hear them over and over again. But I will not permit you to use these sounds as an excuse to go wandering where you don't belong.
But didn't you hear it?
I don't want to talk about it anymore, Miss Winters.
They continue to kind of sprinkle in supernatural elements into the show. The main one is all the talks of ghosts, and the sobbing coming from the basement in the Collins home. And Victoria heard it one night, went snooping around. It was behind that locked door in the basement, and Roger, of course, found her there, was very mad about it. They had a bit of an argument about it.
You do accept my apologies, don't you?
I will if you'll answer one question.
Oh, if I can.
The sobbing, you did hear it, didn't you?
Yes.
What is it? Where does it come from?
I don't know.
But you must.
I've heard it many times before, and I honestly can't tell you where it comes from. Maybe it's one of our ghosts.
But it seems so real.
Ghosts can seem real, Miss Winters. They can seem very, very real indeed.
I wish this was on more. I wish we were seeing more of the supernatural elements of the show more already, because it's the most intriguing part of the show, but they have only sprinkled it in every now and then. There's been like 48 episodes since I started doing this that I've watched, and they've really only focused on this possible sobbing in the basement, this possible ghost, for like maybe 2 or 3 of those 48 episodes. So it's a soap opera, so of course things have to move slow. And like I said in the last video for Dark Shadows, I just feel like Dan Curtis, the creator, was trying to slowly get us into this supernatural world, since this is a daytime soap opera, and at the time very different than all the rest of the soap operas going on, which were more realistic and more like about love or crime. And this is clearly a lot about crime because that's the main story.
Evans, has it ever occurred to you to wonder why Burke has suddenly decided to have his portrait done by you of all people?
Collins, has it ever occurred to you that Burke may realize that I'm a very fine artist?
The level of your talent is completely beside the point.
Now, wait a minute.
Burke will be spending a good deal of time with you, sitting for his portrait, and he knows it. And you two will be doing a good deal of talking, and he knows that too.
You think that I'd ever say anything about... Collins, what I did to that boy 10 years ago is the shame of my life. Do you think that I'd ever say anything about it?
What time is it, Pop?
I wouldn't know.
Ooh, it's 1:15. Don't you think you ought to hit the sack?
No.
This is for me?
That's right.
But you said it was personal and private.
That's right.
That doesn't make any sense. You don't have to write me letters. You can talk to me anytime you want about anything.
Maggie. Maggie, I don't want you opening that letter. Not now. I just want you to put it in a safe place. Keep it there. Don't open it. Don't show it to anybody. Just keep it.
Well, I don't understand.
But don't ask any questions, Maggie. Just promise you'll do as I ask.
How can I promise when I don't know what it's...
Because I ask you to. Believe me, darling. The one thing I hope is that you'll never have to open that envelope. That you'll never have to learn that...
Learn what?
The kettle's boiling.
The main story continues to deal with this past 10 years ago where Burke went away for murder and Roger testified against Burke. Burke thinks Roger was lying at the trial, or so he says. Roger says he was telling the truth. We have this character of Bill Malloy trying to settle this once and for all. Bill Malloy wants to make sure, well, he's finding out that Burke is trying to get revenge on the Collins family by trying to kind of like become in charge of their financial holdings. But Bill, I think, has a sort of relationship with Elizabeth that maybe he cares about her in some way. I think that's what they were going for with Bill. So he kind of wants Roger to be the one to take the fall for it, to protect the rest of the Collins family.
Last night I had a long talk with Sam.
So you were the one that got him all upset. And drunk, too.
Well, it was for his own good.
For his own good? Could be good about getting a man stoned. What do you want with him, anyway?
I think he stumbled onto some information that is dangerous for him to have.
Do you know where he got this information?
No, I'm not sure. I just know he has it. Or at least he says he has it.
You can't believe a thing Pop says after he's had a few drinks.
You may be right, but this is something I have to find out for myself.
Even if it hurts Pop?
I wouldn't want to hurt him, Maggie. I told you I like him. But this concerns someone else. I mean, Elizabeth started. I'd sacrifice anything if it would help him.
It was on my mind to tell Mrs. Stoddard the whole story.
So?
I couldn't do it. I tried. I swear I tried. I just couldn't.
Perhaps I can.
Bill Malloy comes up with this plot where him and Sam and Burke and Roger all need to meet in his office and discuss once and for all what happened 10 years ago. Now, this is why I still gave the month a pretty good rating, because the first few weeks of this month I was planning on giving it kind of a low rating because it was kind of boring and I didn't like the pace the story was going, and I think the story was getting repetitive. But it built to this great moment at the end of the month where Bill called this meeting and Sam and Burke and Roger show up, but Bill never shows up.
Still no answer?
No.
Well, let it ring.
Why? Malloy obviously is not home.
He has a housekeeper, doesn't he? At least she should answer it. Let it ring.
You sure he said he'd be here at 11?
Well, we're here. We're staying here until he gets here. Unless you want to get into the matter right now.
I don't know what he wanted.
Well, I think we've given Bill enough time, don't you?
No.
Oh, Burke, this is ridiculous. It's almost 12. I'm tired.
So am I. Let's go.
Sit down, Sam.
Well, Burke, we've been here almost an hour.
Well, we'll wait another hour if we have to.
Oh, maybe you will, but not I.
And so we get more mystery added to all of these characters now that Bill has disappeared. So did somebody murder Bill now? I like that we're leaving that question open for now. And then Burke gifted David a crystal ball. And here we have David once again being that child that I say, has a connection to the supernatural some way, the problem child. He's used the crystal ball. He says he saw in the crystal ball that Bill is dead and that his father Roger killed him. That was the last episode of August and how that ended. He was telling that to Victoria. They've also built up David hating his father Roger kind of hating his son David up a lot, which I find interesting as well. That is probably the more intriguing part of David as a character, in that him and Roger seem to have a hatred for each other, being father and son. So for me, August 1966 for Dark Shadows wasn't that entertaining, unfortunately, although it built well. The last few episodes of the month were good. And that's why I only dropped it one more point. So far, each month, it has dropped 1 point for me for Dark Shadows. I gave the month of August a 76 grade, which after 3 months gives it an average of 77 because it went 78, 77, 76. So we'll see if that trend continues in September, and I have to drop the show 1 more point yet again for being a little slow and redundant. Hopefully not, though. We ended the month on a more intriguing note than July ended, so I'm hoping that they can at least build upon that. I'm sure it's still gonna be slow in sprinkling in the supernatural elements of the series. I think we're getting close to where I've actually seen some of this before, I think towards the end of the year, we'll get more maybe in-your-face supernatural a bit. But for now, it's still just getting sprinkled in a little by Dan Curtis. Overall, though, I still think the show is very solid. I mean, a 77 score for me, who's Mr. Picky, who is very, very harsh grader on this channel, if you've seen in the past. I think a 77 grade is actually pretty good for me. I still see a 77 as a C+. Barely a C+ and not just a C, but a C+ nonetheless. I think a C+ is 77 to 79. A C is like 73 to 76, and then a C- is like 70 to 72. So it's still a C+ for me, and that's still good. But it needs to be a little better on a daily episodic basis for me to maybe go back up in the grade rather than dropping at a point each month.
Let's call him, shall we?
I've tried, there's no answer.
Well, then we'll try again tomorrow. Arrange for you and me and Bill to sit down together, and I'll answer any questions you put to me. I can't do any more than that, can I?
No.
Fine. Then you just arrange the meeting, and I'll be there. Now, you'd better go to bed.
Good night, Roger.
Good night, Liz. Pleasant dreams.